Stand by alert. Death Star approaching. Estimated time to fire range.
Feeling about this.
Welcome, listeners, to an episode of something that is not quite the Skyhoppers podcast. I am one of your hosts, Ben, and I am joined by nobody at all. I figure, Cole's done a solo episode thing. I think Dakota has done a solo episode thing. So I've decided I'm going to give it a go, even though it's definitely kind of a weird feeling. Basically, what happened this week is everybody is sick or busy, and it's been, we didn't put out anything last week because it was Celebration. Cole and I were together, yet, out of town, unable to record a podcast. You all know, you're all loyal fans, loyal listeners. I'm going to try to not have too much diarrhea of the mouth being here alone on the podcast this evening. You'll notice we don't have any sort of special like Celebration edition, even though Cole, Eva, and I were all at Celebration together. That was great. I'll get into that a little more in a bit, but it was one of those things where this was my third Star Wars Celebration. I feel like this one, for me, this is all speaking for me personally, this one had like an element of chaos that I feel like the other ones didn't. And I think part of that is just because it was in, Los Angeles. It was in Anaheim, okay, but that means Los Angeles. And my little Midwest self, which just kind of felt very overwhelmed, mostly in a fun way, but, a little overwhelmed since LA is just a completely different beast, and even just not even driving, just riding to Celebration every day felt like kind of an adventure in its own right. But it's like the pandemic's not over. There is still a pandemic happening, so there was some level for me personally. This is not a judgment on anybody. Like, I did go, my friends went. I'm certainly not judging them or anyone else, but it's like, to me, it did feel somewhat kind of irresponsible to go. Where it's like, yeah, you got to, it was that balance of like, okay, you've got to live your life. And of course, I tried to be as safe as possible. And everyone I know did as well. But it's just, there's inherent risk with that sort of thing. And I think that really helped contribute to the feeling of just chaos. Not to mention the fact that, there were literally thousands of people. And on Saturday, the convention was just completely packed. Unfortunately, to save myself some money on a plane ticket, I actually didn't see Sunday, but I imagine Sunday was more similar to Saturday than not, even though it was only kind of like a half day and kind of the closing of the whole thing. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. This is not, as I said, this is not an episode. This is probably going to be significantly shorter than an episode. I hope so. Anyway, because it is just me. And if I'm able to drag a full-length episode out all by myself, I'm going to have to reevaluate the way that I live my life and the way that I conduct myself around others. But I don't think it's going to happen. I just kind of, obviously there's far too much from Celebration. It's far too much news, announcements, and just stuff to talk about. Not to mention Kenobi. There are 3 episodes of Kenobi out as we speak. That's something that I'm not going to touch on. I'm not going to touch on anything in particular detail right now. I just kind of want to give a maybe for people who weren't there, someone will find this interesting, I'm sure, just kind of a rundown of the trip. Maybe I'll even eat some crow on this. I'm just going to get out ahead of it so that my co-hosts don't have a chance to roast me for it. And you'll understand what I'm talking about here in just a minute once I start kind of regaling you all with the tale of my trip. First of all, I want to give a shout out to Cole, obviously, and Cole's friend of the pod, my friend, Robert. Robert's been mentioned here before. He definitely comes up on a row of Skywalkers. He is a great guy, Wikipedia admin, so, connected. Without Robert and, kind of without Cole, being friends with Robert, there's no way I would have been able to go. Shout outs to Robcast, who is part of the Star Wars Commonwealth podcasting family, or whatever remains of that. Robcast is a friend of mine. He gave me the badge. Without him, there are so many people that contributed to me being able to make this trip, and without them, I wouldn't have been able to do it. It was a great experience. So thank you, Rob and Robert. Because it's just without your help, I seriously wouldn't have been able to swing it. But yeah, fly out. Thankfully, the trip out was pretty uneventful. I'm not much of a traveler, especially when it comes to flying, but I know it doesn't freak me out too much. So that was all fine and good. Got through security just fine. No problems there. Get out there, hang out on Tuesday, meet up with Cole and Robert at the airport. But the fun begins on Wednesday, and this is where I kind of have to do a bit of a mea culpa and own up to some things that I've said. You'll know Celebration did not start actually until Thursday this past week. May 26th, I think is what that was. And we had a day to kill. We decided to make Wednesday our day to go to the Disney parks, Disneyland. And I was like, okay, whatever. I'm not the biggest Disney fan, but sure, it'll be fun. It'll be an experience. And of course, Galaxy's Edge is at Disneyland. In the past, on the podcast, on both podcasts that I'm a part of, I have been somewhat critical of Galaxy's Edge, something of a naysayer, kind of grumpy about it, I think is probably the most comprehensive way to put it. And I think I've mostly been wrong. Mostly. I still think that in many ways, just the Disney parks in general, Galaxy's Edge being no exception, are kind of the embodiment of like hedonistic capitalism and just how expensive everything is, how exclusive they are to a ton of people that would really love to enjoy them. And I understand, it takes a lot of money to, I'm not discounting the fact that it takes a lot of money to keep these places open. I get that. You want to pay the people that work there. But they're probably not paid enough, a lot of them. And it's just a lot, but that's not what I'm here to dwell on. I am here to focus on the fact that I was wrong. Galaxy's Edge is actually pretty sick. I think I was kind of under the impression that there would be a lot more, the only word is like audience participation. And I'm not someone who enjoys that sort of thing in pretty much any way. So even though I love Star Wars, I was always a little concerned about going to Galaxy's Edge in a way that's like, am I going to have to act like I'm in Star Wars? And I've not really seen anything that led me to believe that was the case. But it was just one of those things where it's like, I didn't know if I was going to be able to do that. I didn't know what I was kind of going to be faced with by the from the cast members, as I've learned they're called at Disney. Thank you again, Robert, for for making that clear. I didn't know how it was going to be. And overall, I think the experience with the average cast member at Galaxy's Edge was pretty normal, pretty standard. Robert explained it. This is not something I experienced, but Robert explained that just a couple times, though, they did have to, since the park has opened, they've had to dumb down the immersion a little bit. Like sometimes the people, like the cast members who are working, selling you something would say like, that'll be 15 credits. And Robert told me that sometimes people don't know what that means and think that there's some sort of conversion rate that needs to that needs a conversion that needs to happen. And realistically, it's like that's kind of a funny thing, but also not all that unreasonable. If this is being sold to you as like a completely immersive experience, right? And they're changing some of the menu items just to be a little more clear. That one also makes sense to me because it's like, well, what is Tip Yip? I don't know. But some highlights. I'm not going to detail my entire trip because I'm sure Cole and I will talk about it once we're all able to come back on the podcast, hopefully next week. Some highlights. The Ronto wrap. Obviously, I don't eat meat. The garden Ronto wrap. Plant-based sausage, and then this like spicy kimchi-esque slaw. Really good. Like way better than I would have expected. I had a drink, I believe, called the Tatooine Sunset? I think it's Sunrise. It's kind of like a tea-based drink. They have another one called Meiluran juice. That one's purple. It's fun. But I felt like I needed to stay on brand and get the Tatooine Sunrise. And I don't regret my decision. However, I do think the Meiluran juice is better because it contains cranberry juice. It's a little sour, and I'm a sucker for sour things. So that was a highlight. Just seeing the world, just the amount of detail that's gone into it. And that's something that I also kind of knew was there, but kind of just underestimated. I underestimated just like the practical craft, the craftsmanship that went into creating this. Like the true to life size X-Wing and the A-Wing and the Millennium Falcon. It's just one of those things. Like, I know Cole was just waiting. I'm surprised he didn't have his phone out whenever we were walking in, because I know that he knew that as soon as I saw that Millennium Falcon, I was going to be like, okay, I get it. And honestly, it wasn't even the Millennium Falcon. I lost it at a moisture evaporator on the way in. Which shouldn't shock any of you who listen to the podcast regularly. And I get it now. I get it. I still think overall, just theme parks, like that sort of attractions just really aren't my thing. But if I had to pick one, it's absolutely Galaxy's Edge. I'm not going to talk in too much detail about this because I don't want to spoil it. I think it is truly a very special experience. I did visit Savi's workshop, which is, as many of you may know, where you construct your own lightsaber. That is, like I said, an incredibly special experience. Without sounding like too much of a dork, like pretty emotional. I went into it thinking, okay, how can I build a lightsaber that looks as much like Luke Skywalker's Return of the Jedi lightsaber as possible? And this is a little corny, but as soon as I got actually into the room, as soon as I was faced with my decisions, I was like, it hit me like an epiphany. Like, no. That's not what I'm here for. I'm here to make my own lightsaber. Cole was my guest. Cole went in there with me. You're allowed one guest. I inadvertently started the first two elements or first two components that I chose were the exact same ones that Cole chose. So I went from making a lightsaber that looked like Luke's to a lightsaber that looks like Cole's. But thankfully they diverted, and I think there's something thematically appropriate about the fact that Cole and I have been friends for a long time now, and now have our own podcast. Plus, Cole's obviously on this podcast as well. So we think there was something appropriate about the fact that we had lightsabers that are not identical by any means, but share some identical characteristics. I actually really liked it. It gave me a good feeling. I did ship my lightsaber home because I didn't want to mess with getting it through security. That's a surprisingly affordable option, but maybe that was just kind of in comparison to all the other prices in Disneyland. I don't know. It wasn't as expensive as I thought it might be. But it is currently Thursday, June 2nd, the day before the episode here is going to go out, and it has not arrived. I shipped it. It probably shipped out a week ago today. So just something to keep in mind. I don't know what their shipping times are like. I'm not worried that it's lost in shipping yet. But that is kind of a constant concern. Whenever I think it was me, Eva, Cole, and Robert. Eva had made it to Galaxy's Edge by that point. Through a very serendipitous set of circumstances, actually. But whenever I dropped my lightsaber off at it was the First Order shop that was responsible for shipping things out that day. I was walking back to the group, and I think it was Cole who was just like, "You look so sad right now." And truthfully, I was. Because I think that it's important that Star Wars continues to grow beyond nostalgia, continues to rely continues to rely on strong, relatable storytelling that is not just driven by nostalgia, but at the same time, that like nostalgia and that feeling of being a kid and experiencing Star Wars for the first time is a powerful feeling, and it just felt really special to have my own lightsaber. And it's like, yeah, I'm sure there were probably other lightsabers made that day that look identical to mine. Because again, speaking of serendipity, it was only by luck. Robert was looking through the booking system. I thought I wasn't going to get one. Robert was looking through the booking system and just happened to see an appointment on the day we were going to be there and grabbed it for me. Because thankfully you don't have to put any money down to book the appointment or anything. But it's full. Everyone wants to do that. So I'm sure there were other identical sabers to mine, but there's still something incredibly special about it. And that kind of leads me back to my complaint, where it's like the things they feel hefty. They feel like they've got weight. They feel like they're quality. I don't regret spending the money. But I will say it is not an insignificant amount of money. It is a significant chunk of change to get one of those things. And it just kind of bums me out. That it is kind of an exclusive thing. But I understand. That's just the way it is. That's just a kind of a personal criticism. I'm sure there's some people that are probably rolling their eyes at that. But I'm okay with that. And yes, before you ask, my lightsaber is green because why wouldn't it be? I mean, it's just one of those things. It just felt like it's a no-brainer. Not even a question. But yeah, that's a very special experience. And I hope that if you're listening and you want to experience that one day you get that chance, because it is 100% worthwhile. The two rides were great too. I'm not going to spoil too much about those either. I'm not a rider myself, generally speaking, but Rise of the Resistance, very fun. One of those things where, again, not a rider, but we pretty much made a straight beeline for it as soon as we got into the park. And before I knew it, we were in line for it. And I'm like, well, okay, I mean, I guess I'm doing this. It feels wrong to not do it. So I'm going to do it. And it was 100% worth it. Not going to spoil it. But even in the line, there's so much to look at. I mean, some of the coolest parts of the ride, if you ask me, happen before you're even on the ride. So I definitely understand why that ride normally has up to like a 4-hour wait time or whatever, because it's just that cool. Smuggler's Run, I think is the other one's called. The one where you're flying the Falcon, also very fun. That one I think would be a little more fun if you're able to get in there with a group of 6 people to fully crew out the Falcon. But I will say Cole and I were the pilots, which felt right. Obro Skywalker's flying the Millennium Falcon. And Cole had more than enough enthusiasm to make up for the fact that we had 3 other people we didn't know flying the Falcon, because Robert was there with us too. So that was a ton of fun. And of course, I think it was the last ride I went on that day was Star Tours, just because it's historical. I wasn't going to not do it, I guess one of the things maybe that kept Star Wars alive during the dark times back in like 87. So I think I owe some sort of debt to it. And it was a ton of fun. Our route, I think, went to Hoth and Coruscant. And of course, that's all randomized. The banter between R2 and 3PO, really good. Just a quality ride. And I understand so many of you are like, are you just now understanding that Disney is fun? And I do apologize. I do apologize for that. But yeah, that's the Disney trip in a nutshell. At least the things that I was the most excited for. Celebration, I don't even know where to begin. There is just so much to unpack. I guess briefly, again, I don't even remember the days. I don't remember when I did what. I know I saw like 3 separate publishing panels. The High Republic panel, I think, might have been on the first day, where they announced basically the entirety of Phase 2. New original audio production, which of course I am very excited for. There was a panel as well, another panel about the production of those audio productions and audiobooks to a lesser extent, but it really seemed like that is an area. I mean, clearly it's an area they're moving into. We've got Jedi Lost, Dr. Aphra, Tempest Runner, and now we're getting another High Republic one. Clearly, it is a direction they're moving in, but it is just thrilling to me as someone who has long championed the virtues of the Star Wars original audio production, or even the adaptation audio production, something that goes beyond an audiobook. It was really heartening to see. And of course, Mark Thompson was at that panel as well, and I absolutely adore Mark Thompson. He's such an incredibly talented guy, very funny. It seems like everyone that's working on Star Wars now is talented and funny and just charismatic in their own way. So it was great to see all these, like, some mega famous people, some less than famous people. Like, I don't think I was ever in the same room as Dave Filoni. I think Cole wasn't either. I don't think. And that might be for the best that Cole was not in the same room as Dave Filoni. But he's again, it's like, I don't agree with everything the guy does, but I feel like he believes in Star Wars, and he's just so charismatic. He can sell me on anything if he's sitting right there in front of me, because he's so funny. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. I'm sure, again, Cole's listening to this and is like, oh my God, shut up. Get off of, stop talking about how great Dave Filoni is. But we saw there was a nonfiction audio or nonfiction publishing panel as well that talked about some of the Dorling Kindersley the DK books that are coming out, and then some of the Abrams. I think it's Abrams. Is it? I'm looking at I think that's what it is. The Art of books. They talked about the Kristen Baver's upcoming Art of the High Republic, which I am very hyped for. And then Phil Shostak was there just to talk about the Art of the Mandalorian Season 2, which is already out, but he has written all of the other big coffee table Art of books. I believe all of them. Definitely all of the ones for the sequel trilogy. I don't know about the Star Wars story movies, but he was really great too. I've really enjoyed his Twitter presence. But just again, like, I think especially everyone working in publishing, not I'm picking favorites. It just seems like a really good group, really good group of people. For that High Republic panel, I was in the same room as Daniel Jose Older, who, another person that I'm like, I don't love everything you've ever done, but I love you as a person and I love you as an author. So just kind of starstruck being in the same room as all of the High Republic authors. Actually, the first panel I went to on Thursday was, I think Cole and Robert had split off to go to another panel. Oh yeah, or Robert did anyway, because I know Robert got into the Lucasfilm like studio showcase or whatever, because that's just the way those badge lotteries worked. I was just like, well, okay, Cantina Cast is on the podcast stage. That's a podcast I've heard of. So I went and checked them out just on a whim, and Claudia Gray was up on stage. So their live episode from Celebration was Claudia Gray on it. It kind of set the tone for the weekend. It was going to be a very High Republic, very, very publishing focused weekend, or at least, so I thought. All those publishing panels were highlights. We got a map. If you went to the nonfiction publishing one, you got a map poster that I got signed by Cole Horton, Kristen Baver, and one of my all-time faves, Jason Fry. And that map is a poster from the Star Wars Timelines book that is coming out. I don't remember. Again, there's so many things happened this weekend. You'll have to forgive me, but that's like, I'm sure there are a lot of you that are like, why are you spending so much time on publishing? You're not even talking about the Andor teaser trailer, which, again, not going to go into super detail on because my thoughts alone, I think, aren't particularly interesting. It looks so good. It looks so good. And there's something that's really nice to me about knowing that's like, this is a 24 episode series across 2 seasons. You know how I am about things ending and how I always want things to end for some reason. It's nice to know that it's kind of a self-contained thing because we already have Cassian's endpoint. We have that. So seeing how he gets there is what I'm most interested in, and it looks like from some of the interviews with like Tony Gilroy and some other creators on the show, that's exactly what we're going to be getting. But yeah, that teaser trailer looked awesome, even when I just watched it on my phone, you know, in the convention center. I tried so hard to wait until we got back to Robert's apartment, but I just couldn't. So that's obviously sick. We got into the, just in the standby line, we got into the Tales of the Jedi streaming panel. Streaming, I mean, I think we've explained this on the podcast in the past. Some of the bigger panels have the main stage that you can go to, but then they also kind of have these overflow rooms where they stream the panel. And whenever they darken the screen, you know, a lot of times these panels will stream live to the internet. And whenever they turn off the stream and hide what they're showing to the people that are at Celebration on the internet, the people in those streaming stages still get to see what's there. Tales of the Jedi, I have some ever so slightly mixed feelings about that. Again, we'll go into a little more at a later date. Overall, I feel a little misled. I shouldn't, because the thing wasn't even officially announced before Celebration. But I know that we've talked in the past about how, well, this is the exact same Tales of the Jedi logo from the Legends comic series, and it's an anthology series. We could very easily get something from the Old Republic, or from the Tales of the Jedi comics, like some Ula Keldroma, Exar Kun. Like, that was what I wanted, and that's my own fault for wanting that. But I feel like I didn't pull that expectation out of nowhere. You understand? You see what I'm saying? What we did get, though, Dave Filoni introduced it as whenever he was traveling for, you know, to like shoot The Mandalorian, he's working on the live action stuff, he'd write these little stories about these Jedi. And I was like, well, okay, this is interesting. There's probably going to be an Ahsoka one for sure. You know, it's Dave Filoni. And so I was wondering where this was going to go. I was simultaneously excited and disappointed to find that not only is this more Clone Wars is obviously it's not that time period. But this is kind of more stuff in that vein, in that era that Dave Filoni has really focused a lot of his storytelling, and not just his storytelling, but you know what I mean, the Dave Filoni shorthand for the team that works on the shows. But it's more of that, and it's actually only focusing on 2 Jedi, which was it just felt kind of limited, especially because the way Dave framed it seemed like there could be more of this, but it seemed like it was kind of a little side passion project for him, not necessarily, or almost like a art project is definitely the wrong word, but he described these shorts as tone poems at one point. And the one they showed us a Celebration, which I won't spoil too much of, because again, we might talk about it at a later date, but definitely fit that vibe. The 2 Jedi that the show is focusing on, for those who are somehow unaware, are Ahsoka, because of course, and Count Dooku before he leaves the Jedi Order. And then by extension, Qui-Gon Jinn as well. So you understand why my feelings are ever so mildly mixed. Because, we're hard on Ahsoka on the show sometimes, but I do think she's a good character, and this is where I really like her. I feel like this is going to tell some really interesting stories about her, because the series is meant to focus on like pivotal moments in these characters' lives. So I think we will get some really good Ahsoka stuff, and I'm glad they showed us the first one they did, so that it's kind of out of the way, because I liked it, but I'm going to like the other ones more, I think. The Dooku ones, cannot wait for. Truly, simply cannot wait for. So, this is not Exar Kun. This is not Ula Keldroma or Nomi Sunrider. But, it is going to be very cool. I think the animation is gorgeous. I just can't wait. I can't wait. No movie news, which was kind of a bummer. I didn't get into the Ahsoka panel, so I can't, or I don't know if it was a panel or if it was just the Mando Plus panel. I did not see and have not seen the Mando trailer or Mando footage just floating around on the internet, just because, I don't know. I mean, it's like, I kind of have the brief synopsis of what happens in those things, but I'll wait till they actually come out. I don't mind waiting. But then we got some Ahsoka footage that seems to directly connect it to Star Wars Rebels, which is kind of a bummer, but also knowing that's probably what's going to happen, it's also kind of exciting in a way. And I know that's kind of contrary to a lot of what I've said in the past, but I'm actually kind of excited for that. Excited to see where that goes. Obviously, this is a podcast that supports our trans friends. We do, to put it lightly, do not like Rosario Dawson. Wish Rosario Dawson was not playing Ahsoka. That is a major, unremovable, at least from our point of view, our perspective, blemish on the show. I do want to continue to make that clear anytime this show comes up. But there was also someone playing Sabine that was announced. I believe she was rumored at one point, and I don't remember her name. But I am actually trying to keep this brief, so apologies. It's out there. You can find that info, and we'll talk about it more in the future. But, of course, the biggest thing that happened this past weekend, was Kenobi. Which, again, I'm not going to talk about in a ton of detail, but there are 3 episodes out now, and it's so good. It's so good. I love it. And I think that's actually probably where I'm going to wrap things up, because I don't know how we're going to structure the next few episodes of the podcast, just because there's so much to cover. Kenobi keeps happening. It's a bummer that we're already halfway through the show. But it's beautiful. It's definitely, if not the best live action Star Wars we've gotten, certainly on Disney Plus, maybe since the prequel trilogy? I don't know. Last Jedi's really good. But I know there are some, I don't want to say dissenting opinions on the podcast, but there's some other opinions amongst co-hosts on the podcast. So that'll be something interesting to talk about once we get there. I think the characters are great. I'm going to spoil it a little bit. So if you haven't watched it, that's unlikely if you're listening to the podcast, but I think young Leia is really good. I think young Leia being kidnapped is, I don't want to say the one believable way for them to get Obi-Wan off of Tatooine for me, but it's the only one I can imagine at this point, because I'm just like, oh, I get it. That's actually really good. They dangle Luke in front of our nose, and it's Leia is the one that we're going to be spending, half the show with, probably more. I think she's doing a great job. I think she's written very well. I think Reva is an absolutely unhinged character, and I mean that in the best way. I think she's super compelling. I think now that we know she has aspirations of being the Grand Inquisitor, she's evil, but I'm excited to see where she goes. Ewan McGregor, of course, is just immaculate as Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's doing such a good job. More sand. That's always a plus for me. I'm sure we'll see Tatooine again in the series. Can't come soon enough for me. Honestly, I hope that if they end up doing a season 2, it's a more faithful adaptation of Kenobi by John Jackson Miller. But anyway, I think that's where I'm going to wrap it up for this evening. It's getting late. I do still need to get this prepped, ready to go, all that stuff before tomorrow. And the patrons are going to be mad because it's, technically only an hour and a half that they're still technically getting this early. So you can find the podcast, SW Skyhoppers on Twitter. You can email us at skyhopperspodcast@gmail.com. If you want more Skyhoppers content, this is the only episode that's just me, by the way. So if you really hate it, you can go patreon.com/Skyhopperspodcast. As little as $1 a month. You get access to not only every episode, which, is free, but to all of our After Hours episodes where we just hang out, talk about whatever. A lot of times it's still Star Wars. We do try to stop ourselves when that happens, but not always very good at it. Yeah, I think that's everything. And since I'm the only one here, I don't have anything else to add. And since I don't have anything else to add, this is the Skyhoppers Podcast, signing off.